Welcome back to the TwinSpires Jury. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Darin Zoccali to talk our best bets and fades of the week at Turfway Park, Oaklawn, Fairgrounds, Gulfstream, and we'll talk about the Jerome Stakes at Aqueduct as well. And Darin, it's good to have you back. I hope you enjoyed your vacation.
Yeah, it was a good time. It's always good to get to some warmer weather for New Year's Eve. So everything up here is so expensive. I think it might have actually cost us less money to travel down to Florida than stay in New York City.
Yeah, I believe it. Well, I'll let you start things off in the new year. Tell us what your best bet of the week is and where you're going to play that.
Yeah, I'm going to keep the Florida theme going. I'm going to head down to Gulfstream Park. They've got a really good card on Saturday. The featured race, the last race of the day, it's the Dania Beach for 3-year-olds going a mile. I am a big fan of Palm Tree overall as a racehorse, and especially in this spot. If you go back to his race in the Grade 2 Bourbon, he was making steady progress while in behind horses coming through the stretch. He doesn't have this huge turn of foot, but he just kind of keeps going and has this kind of long gobbling up the ground stride to him. And as the horses started to come back to him where he was staying on, he just ran into a wall of horses and had to check hard. He wasn't going to win the race, was probably going to end up third in that spot. Would have been a much better running line had he done so. Then he came back 2 months later in the Pulpit Stakes, where he raced extremely wide on the far turn, and he had a very talented horse by the name of Noted to his inside. And the rider that day, Luis Saez, was forced to kind of make a premature move on the far turn to maintain his position and keep Noted pinned down. It was very similar to the Florida Derby last year, the move that Mage had to make on the far turn and keeping Forte kind of stuck. And Palm Tree made that move a little prematurely. He hit the front inside the 8th pole and then Noted when he shook free, was able to run that horse down. But it was a really good effort. I think this is a 3-year-old son of Street Boss that's going to continue to get better. And James, I think the future is very bright for him as a 3-year-old on the turf. And I think he's strictly the horse to beat in the Dania Beach.
Well, I agree with your assessment about that Bourbon Stakes. In fact, I think the race is between two horses that are exiting that race because number 3, Depiction, is coming back as well from Cherie DeVaux. I'll just say, I mean, that Bourbon Stakes, best race for 2-year-olds on the turf last year. Can Group got beat 2 lengths in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf after being 11th, a wide 11th at the top of this stretch. Noted, as you've mentioned, won the Pulpit last out. Vote Knows, the big favorite in the Turfway Preview Stakes on Saturday. And if you look at First World War was 4th. I mean, you had some really good horses in that stake race. I believe Talk's another one. So I do think it's between the 2 runners from that, Palm Tree, who you like, and Depiction for Cherie DeVaux. And my best bet of the week is number 10, Escapeologist, in the 8th race at Oaklawn Park on Saturday. Escapeologist is a newly turned 4-year-old colt for Kenny McPeak. He ran him a couple times, or he ran him a handful of times on dirt and maiden races before he switched to the turf and broke his maiden last spring. Followed with a turf race and a synthetic race. But I really liked his last race in May before he headed to the sidelines for a 4-month vacation. He ran a head second to Salute the Stars in an allowance race. That horse came right back to beat Kings Barnes in the Pegasus Stakes at Monmouth Park. And then I loved how Escapeologist came back from that 4-month freshening this fall. And he came back on a turf race, didn't run well, then ran in a starter race, won that race at Churchill Downs. But at Keeneland, 2 starts back, he beat Grand Aspen, who won an allowance next out for Pletcher, ran a head second in the Harlan's Holiday last week, and is going to be a contender in the Pegasus World Cup at the end of January. I thought that field was much better than the horse he's facing on Saturday. Even last time, Command Performance was coming off a head second to First Mission, who came back to run a head second in the Grade 2 Clark. He's a good horse, First Mission. I just think he's been running against better rivals, running extremely well against better rivals, and I think he's going to get the right setup in a speed-laden field and come rolling in the stretch on Saturday, Ashley.
I like it. Kenny McPeak is hot at Oaklawn as well, 28% winner this meet. So definitely a good choice. I'm going to take it over to Fairgrounds for the Nelson J. Menard Memorial Stakes, and I'm going with, I think you say Ovray. Pardon my French. I don't know French. I think it's Ovray at 7-2. It's horse number 5. And switching back to turf here after finishing 3rd in the Chaluki on Churchill's main track, and Ovray 2 back, the 5-year-old won by nearly 2 lengths and a 1-mile allowance on turf. at Keeneland, and then 3-back, 1, an allowance at 6.5 furlongs, leading at every call. So I like the cutback in distance here. Trainer Chris Block is a 22% winner at Fairgrounds, and Jareth Loveberry will retain the mount. He won the 2 times that Ovray raced at Fairgrounds. The only 2 times she has raced before at Fairgrounds, both at today's distance. She also won this race last year, so looking to defend her title. I like her over Karimba, the morning line favorite, who just won the Panzeretta Stakes. Over is also 6 for 10 on turf and 4 for 6 at today's distance. So I like her a lot better. And you get her at 7-2 on the morning line.
Yeah, I like a versatile type. She's a multiple stakes winner on dirt and turf. And her race last time at Chaluki, she got beat a nose for second. So I thought that was a good effort. Like you said, she's 2 for 2 at Fairgrounds on their turf. So won't be surprised to see Ovray run a big race, Darin.
Yeah, no, tough turf sprint. Always count Ashley to pick the tough races for her best bet. But yeah, I mean, look, I have been a fan of Karimba for quite some time. We owned a filly a couple of years back that ran against her at Horseshoe Indianapolis when she was just getting her career started. She's a quirky filly, used to be in the barn of Wesley Ward, has had some gaps in her running lines, but she's gotten back to some of her best form. If she can keep that form and stay sound and stay on the racetrack, I do think she's going to be tough. And there's not a ton of early speed in here. There's some. You're always going to have some speed in a turf sprint, but it's not overbearing by any stretch of the imagination. So I'll be curious to see who gets the best trip here. But I do think Karimba is going to be dangerous once again.
All right, let's move on to the horses we're not backing at a short price. James, who you got?
I'm going to fade number 4, Bromley, in the 7th race at Turfway Park on Saturday. That's the race after the stake there at Turfway. And, you know, Bromley is a colt that in the fall or in the late in the 2022, his 2-year-old season, I really liked how he won his debut at like 20+1 odds at Churchill Downs going away. And then I loved his entry-level allowance win at Turfway. I actually used him in the comp. He got bet down to 8-1 that day off of that allowance win at Turfway. Didn't run any good in that spot, and he went on to go 0 for 5 in 2023, his best result being a few third-place finishes. And after coming back from a layoff this past fall, Bromley has lost ground in the stretch of all 3 of his starts. That's always a negative for me, especially at short odds. So if I'm going to back a horse like Bromley, I need to see an at a short price. I need to see an encouraging performance first, Darin.
Yeah, he's actually a horse that I'm fading as well. And I was looking at this late pick 5 sequence at Turfway Park on Saturday night, and there's 2 favorites on the morning line that I don't like, and Bromley is one of them. The other one is my fade in race number 5, which is a maiden event for older horses going 6 furlongs. I'm fading the Bob Baffert to Brittany Russell shipper in Yungara, a 4-year-old who made his debut very late in his 3-year-old season at Del Mar, where he was off to a slow beginning, never seemed comfortable, finished last, well beaten. These Baffert horses, when they go to the Midwest, sometimes they go to Rudy Brissett. Now, sometimes they go to Brittany Russell for Starlight and SF Racing. You can make money betting against these horses as a general rule. That doesn't mean that they're always going to lose, but every time one of these horses pops up, they're wildly overbet because of the connections coming out of a race at a major racetrack. And that's not to say that this is the strongest field in the world. And I don't really have a strong opinion as to who I like against this horse. There's probably 3 or 4 horses that I will use against him in the pick 5. But just on the angle alone, the fact that this horse, I don't think this horse is going to be anywhere near 7-2 as the morning line. I think this horse is going to be like 8-5 at post time. And for me, every time you see a horse like this show up in a spot like this, play against, you do it habitually, you're going to make money in the long run if you can connect a couple of times. So I'm going to go against Yungara to kick off this late pick 5 at Turfway Park, the 5th race on Saturday night, James.
Yeah, I like that fade. I agree with you. I mean, there might be an exception when he's transferring horses for that are 3-year-olds that could be Triple Crown contenders. But this was a total cull of the stock. He saw that horse train. He gave him 1 race. He decided he wasn't good enough to be part of his barn out there. He's going to be overbet, like you referenced, Darin. I thought those were all good points.
Yeah, I was curious to hear your reasoning because this is a very tricky race, and I don't really know which horse I would say I feel confident in. I was interested in number 5, Scarab, I think is how you say it, at 6-1, but Kelsey Danner's stats going dirt to all weather, not so great. So, but I do like recent form there. So I think I'd probably go with number 5, but yeah, a tough race for sure.
It is, and it's one of those races where, I'm not taking a bold stand with any one horse, but by fading against the favorite here and having another favorite that I'm going to fade against later, James's horse, gives me an opportunity to spread against with some value and try to catch maybe a low percentage barn or a horse that's going to be a price that's going to get overlooked and be really inflated when it comes to the horse's position in the multi-race exotics, because a lot of people are going to hone in on Youngara to kick off the pick 5.
Yeah, I like it. All right, I'm going to fade number 5, Ice Orchid at 9-5 in race 9, the Pippin Stakes at Oaklawn. This is basically a rematch of the Mistletoe Stakes from December. I also faded Ice Orchid on the jury as well, and did in fact fail as the favorite to Butterbean, who reopposes here. Ice Orchid has failed as the favorite in her last 2 starts, and the Super Saver mare is stretching back out to 1 1/16 of a mile. She's 2 for 8 from that distance, but more concerning, she's 1 for 8 at Oaklawn. Her last win at Oaklawn was way back in February of 2022, and she's 0 for 5 since then. John Ortiz is a little cold this meet as well, 2 for 20. So I'm fading Ice Orchid. It is a smaller field, but I think Butterbean will get the edge again in this race.
That's a fair fade. I thought all 5 fillies in there had a chance, but I look at Ice Orchid. She's got 8 starts there with 5 seconds at thirds at Oaklawn. I would definitely, if I was using her, I'd be playing her in a straight vertical exotic underneath and fading her for the top spot.
Well, before we move on, Darin, you got any promos at TwinSpires this weekend?
Of course, we always have promotions. It's the new year, so we do have a couple of new offers. The Bayou Bluegrass, though, is continuing. That is our points offer at Fairgrounds and Turfway Park. 10x, 10 times wager rewards for all of your wagers at Turfway Park and Fairgrounds on all of their days of racing. So be sure to stick with that. Trifecta Tuesday has made a comeback. It is back for the month of January, where we give you a 15% boost on your trifecta winnings. All tracks that we offer on a Tuesday. So opt in, play some tries on Tuesday, get involved there. The Winter Money Back gets underway this week on Thursday. There'll be selected races Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday throughout the month. So take a look at that offer. Check out the races, and you can bet with some confidence knowing if you run second or third, you're going to get your money back. And a tip of the cap to the harness fans, 10 times wager reward points on all harness races, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, as it seems that early on in the year, the schedule is kind of dominated by some harness racing on those days early in the week. So we want to give the harness fans some love as well. So a bit of a more diverse group of offers, Ashley, but as always, something for everybody.
Sounds good. And we'll stick with you. Tell us what you're looking forward to this weekend. And real quick, I know you already mentioned Gulfstream once, and I wanted to ask you as our resident meteorologist. I know Gulfstream's got, I think, some rain coming. So does that affect your handicapping with turf races and what you're looking forward to this weekend?
Yeah, it can. You got to pay attention. It's weird in Florida because rain can pop up and disappear at any particular moment. So I don't get too bogged down in it. The days leading up to it, when I'm handicapping throughout the day, I will pay attention. There's certainly something to horses running better over softer ground as opposed to firmer ground. And if the races come off going to a synthetic, so there's a lot to look at there. If you're betting Aqueduct this weekend, though, pay attention. We do have some snow and some slushy mess coming to New York City. So that's the update from Doppler Darin. But no, at Gulfstream this weekend, I'm really interested in Valiant Force, a horse that I actually bet in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint that had my heart broken because he got beat half a length at 23-1. He's running over dirt for the first time as he switches barns and goes to the Jorge Delgado stable. And he's going to run in the Limehouse race number 10 going 6 furlongs. Interesting situation. A horse that won the Grade 2 Norfolk at Royal Ascot, ran in the Group 1 Prix behind the very talented Van Dijk, and then ran second sprinting on the turf in the Breeders' Cup, trying dirt for the first time. But he has an American dirt pedigree by Malibu Moon out of a quality road mare. So certainly something to be said from the fact that the breeding suggests that the dirt should be no problem. Just very interested to see what this horse does because he's extremely talented and to see what he can do on dirt and if he could show that type of versatility. I think he's one of the more interesting horses of the weekend, guys.
He had a huge
I like it.
first not speed figure on turf. So I like to see what can happen on dirt after that.
He was 150-1 when he won the Norfolk, and he
Yeah.
totally backed up that upset win, like you referenced, Darin, in his next couple starts. And you said it. I mean, Malibu Moon's the sire of 2013 Kentucky Derby winner Orb. I see Malibu Moon on the top, and he's out of a quality road mare. I'm thinking a Derby 2-turn type, but he's a sprinter through and through. Valiant Force is, and Yeah, I always like seeing those horses. They come over and let's see if he can run on dirt.
Well, James, tell us, speaking of Kentucky Derby, we got a
Yeah.
prep race this weekend.
For my what else, I'm going to reference Saturday's Jerome Stakes at Aqueduct. It is a road to the Kentucky Derby Series qualifier. It's the lone qual. There's no qualifiers next weekend, so it's the only qualifier until January 20th when they run the Lecomte Stakes at Fairgrounds. And the Jerome is the first of 4 qualifiers at Aqueduct in 2024, offering points on a 10, 5, 3, 2, 1 scale, the top 5 finishers. There's only 5 entered, so all 5 are due to receive points. And the horse to beat in there, I think the morning line favorite is definitely going to be Drumroll Please off of that 3rd place effort in the Remsen. He'll look to flatter Dornick and Sierra Leone, who ran 1-2 that afternoon. But I will reference number 4, El Grand O. This is a colt that ran for Linda Rice in Open Company a couple times, ran in the Skidmore Stakes, came off the turf at Saratoga, the Champagne Stakes last fall. But I really liked I thought his best performance last season was his last race out in October 29th in that Sleepy Hollow. He took serious pressure from a speedball that backed up and ran dead last. He put him away on the front end, and he just won, I thought, powerfully in the stretch. That was an off track, so a wet track will benefit El Grando. And I'm going to give him the edge in the Jerome Stakes on Saturday.
Yeah, I was looking at him too. I liked his speed figure last out. I think actually a couple points higher than the par figure for this race. And Linda Rice, 18% winner at Aqueduct, and El Grande O is 2 for 3 at Aqueduct as well.
He's
So
going to show speed from the gate.
yeah, I like it. And
I do the expert picks on Saturday for Aqueduct, and I don't want to give anything away yet, but I will say this. The 3 Sweet Saudi J ran a very, very fast race last time at Laurel, and kind of interested to see what he can do at a price against some of these horses that have been running up in New York, like Drumroll Please and El Grando. Drumroll Please coming out of that very odd Remsen Stakes where Dornock somehow came back to win against Sierra Leone, who ripped my heart out, and I think he might have ripped your heart out that day too, James, when he made the front and then just kind of pulled himself up. I've never seen a horse lose a race like that when he got a length clear and somehow managed to lose in the last 70 yards.
That was like my toughest beat in
Yeah.
2023. I mean, it was
Yeah.
also probably the most recent, but yeah, that was really brutal. He had it in the bag. Sweet Saudi J. I mean, he's stretching out to a mile, but boy, that Heft Stakes really was a big performance. Be interested to see if he can carry his form forward.
yeah, a lot of good horses. I even thought Fletcher's horse at 7 furlongs romped by like 10 lengths and
Yeah.
then came out and was 6 stretching out, but then
He
has a
was
chance to
6
move
in
forward.
that Parchment Party race that Honor Marie was. I'm sorry, Catching Freedom was 4th that day, and he won the Smarty Jones last Monday. So that was a really tough allowance race, and I wouldn't hold that 6th place effort too much against Canate.
Yeah, with it being a small field, I mean, I feel like anything can happen. So, and I'm going to take it over to Turfway Park and talk about the Turfway preview stakes. There's a weather element here too. I think there's going to be a snowstorm potentially at Turfway, but I think early in the morning. So we'll see if it affects the Turfway preview stakes for 3-year-olds. But number 1, Vote No. You talked about the Bourbon earlier. James, Vote No finished a length 3rd Deccan group in the Grade 2 Bourbon at Keeneland, and now switching back to all weather. Broke his maiden on synthetics at Presque Isle Downs, but I don't really like his draw on the rail. I'm actually more interested in number 3, Joe Shiesty, which you might like that name. I think is a reference to Joe Burrow. Perfect name for horse racing in Florence, Kentucky. Just romped to a 12-length win, breaking his maiden at Turfway in December. And I think an interesting choice here, moving up in class. I'm gonna back him here. Not a great price on the morning line, 2-1, but the morning line favorite is Vote No at 9-5. And I'm also going to back Quarryman, Brad Cox runner, who you're going to get a good price potentially at 5-1 on the morning line. Quarryman made his first start on synthetics last out in his 4th career start, got an 85 brisnet speed figure, a career best for him. I think has a chance to move forward in a second try on synthetics as well. So an interesting race for 3-year-olds over at Turfway Park to check out as well.
Yeah, I think Vote No is going to be shorter than 9-5. I mean, I definitely expect him to take a lot of money for Bill Morey. You know that Sweet Saudi J is cross-entered to that race too,
Yep.
Darin.
Yeah, I knew that as well. I was trying to follow Twitter, and it sounded like they thought he was going to run in the Jerome, but as of this point, I haven't seen one way or another definitive which way he was going to go. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I think the Jerome is actually the easier spot, but that's my own opinion.
Yeah, he's only
Maybe.
raced on all weather one time, and I think been racing on dirt the last 5 races. So
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like Jerome might be better for him too as well.
He just ran 4 days ago, also, so they're wheeling him back real quick, one way or the other.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all the time we have today for the jury. Head to twinspires.com or the TwinSpires app to check out all those promos that Darin mentioned, and we'll be back next Thursday for more best bets and fades.